Have you ever wondered how one single day, one unshakable stand by a small band of believers, could forever alter the destiny of a religion that today touches over 1 billion hearts? Stay with me, because what happened on the blistering sands of Karbala was no mere skirmish fought and forgotten. It was a moment of monumental courage, forged in heat that turned spearheads molten to the eye. It was a day when human dignity rose taller than banners of power, when a handful of souls drew a moral line so bright that it still guides pilgrims at midnight. A tragedy so profound, a sacrifice so pure that its echo has never faded, shaping the Muslim world and stirring the human conscience every Muharram for 1,345 years. This is the true story of Ashura Unveiled, the 10th of Muharram, 61 AH, October 10th, 680 AD by the Roman calendar. A desolate plain called Karbala sprawls on the western bank of the Euphrates in today's Iraq, its baked clay fissured like cracked glass. Heat wavers above thorny shrubs. Into this furnace step 72 brave souls, men with sun-bleached armor, adolescent boys gripping swords almost their height, and the veiled women and children of the Prophet's own household. They face an ocean of spears, nearly 30,000 soldiers in iron and chainmail, their drums beating like a thunderstorm. Here, in a lonely corner of the Caliphate, a single act of defiance will brand itself into the scroll of history. But what tempest of politics and broken covenants drove the Muslim community to this tragic confrontation? Why was the Battle of Karbala all but inevitable? And why, more than a millennium later, do countless Muslims still weep when the name of Hussein is spoken? Why do city streets from Lahore to Lagos flood with black-clad mourners every Ashura? To truly understand, we must journey back to the turbulent decades that followed the passing of the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. When unity began to fray like a standard in high wind. When the Prophet left this world in 632 AD, Islam was a young oak whose roots had barely gripped the soil. The tribal rivalries of Arabia had been knitted beneath the banner of Tawheed, the oneness of God, and the Ummah was blazing a new path of law and ethics. Yet leadership of this budding community soon became a fault line. The first 4 caliphs, honored as the Rashidun, strove to carry the Prophet's torch with humility. But each succession tightened the coil of tension. The first fitna, the civil war between forces of Ali and Muawiyah, had opened a wound that never fully closed, leaving grief in Medina, scars in Kufa, and questions in every heart about who should hold the Prophet's mantle. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, once the savvy governor of Syria, cemented the caliphate after years of bloodshed. Yet in a move that stunned pious Muslims, he named his own son Yazid as heir, transforming a consultative caliphate into a hereditary throne. This princely successor was infamous for night-long drinking, hunting with predatory beasts, and mocking the very ethics his grandfather's foes had perished to uphold. Across the empire, scholars grieved, companions protested, and market talk questioned how faith could survive beneath such rule. Among the loudest hearts of dissent stood Imam Hussein ibn Ali, grandson of the Prophet, son of Fatima Zahra and Imam Ali, the Lion of God. Hussein carried the blood of revelation in his veins. He was revered for wisdom that softened chiefs and for compassion that fed beggars before they could knock. To him, swearing allegiance to Yazid was not a mere political pledge. It meant stamping the Prophet's name on tyranny. Why was this single refusal so dangerous? Because Hussein was more than a revered scholar. To millions, he was the living memory of the messenger. His voice could summon armies without raising a trumpet. Yazid knew that if this grandson denounced him, governors might revolt, soldiers might desert, and the empire's prestige would crumble like dry mortar. So the palace issued an ultimatum. Hussein must pledge allegiance or embrace death. The next heartbeat was a moment of alpine principle. Rather than bend, Hussein chose exile over compromise. As pressure mounted in Medina, he prepared to leave, Not with war banners, but with family, trusting God, and letters from Kufa. From that Iraqi garrison town, post riders had delivered sackfuls of pleas. "Come to us, O grandson of the Prophet. 18,000 swords will guard you. Lead us against Yazid's injustice." Those signatures, inked with hope, were 16 cubits high when stacked. Believing justice might bloom in Kufa, Hussein began his fateful journey, but Yazid moved faster. The new governor of Kufa, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, descended like a desert storm. He arraigned suspected partisans, lashed poets who praised Hussein, hanged messengers in the market square, and stationed cavalry on every road. Hope evaporated from Kufa's tea houses. Shutters closed at dusk. The bravest of men bit their tongues in fear. Simultaneously, detachments galloped to hem Hussein's caravan long before it could reach the city gates. Thus the tension stretched taut as a bowstring. On the 2nd of Muharram, September 2nd, 680, Hussein's caravan, scarcely 100 souls with only 40 fighting men, found its path barred near Karbala. Sardum. The Euphrates shimmered within bowshot, yet horses' hooves churned between. Forced to camp on desolate ground, Hussein's party erected goat hair tents, spears converted to tent pegs, hearts lifted in prayer. Circle after circle of Umayyad soldiers closed around them like iron rings forging a chain. Picture the scene. Midday sun hammering tent canvas. Mirages dancing where shade should be. Small children licking parched lips. Fatima al-Sugra fanning her little sister. Warriors sharpening blades they know cannot tilt the odds. At dawn, drums roll among the besiegers. At dusk, the muezzin's call drifts unanswered across no man's land. Between, dust devils chase each other across the plain, mocking both armies. No water reaches Hussein's camp after the 7th of Muharram. Each leather flask hangs empty like a silent bell. Yet Imam Hussein did not waver. He sent emissaries with olive branch proposals, permit him to return to Medina, or allow passage to the distant frontiers where he might call the faithful to piety. Every plea struck the granite of imperial orders. Unconditional submission or silence forever. Have you ever stood at a crossroads, sensing that the easy path would corrode your soul, while the righteous path might cost your very breath? That was Karbala. Night draped the plain on the 9th of Muharram. Under a sky braided with stars, Hussein gathered his companions. Lanterns flickered on solemn faces. Abbas, the standard bearer, the elderly Muslim Ibn Awsaja, the teenage Qasim, the wide-eyed children. With a voice that quivered yet rang clear, Hussein declared, "The enemy seeks only my blood. Take the darkness as your cloak and go." A hush followed. Then one by one voices answered, "Never by God." Even the wounded crawled to pledge again. Swords were tested, wills tempered, and the camp hummed with Quran recitation through that final night. Dawn broke on the 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura. A crimson band edged the horizon. Some chronicles say the sky itself paled as if forewarned. Hussein led the Fajr prayer, his voice steady though thirst clawed every throat. He mounted his horse Zuljana, rode before the enemy ranks and spoke, "People of Iraq, look upon me. I am the grandson of your prophet. By God, kill me not until you know whom you slay." Some soldiers sobbed behind visors. Their commanders barked them back to formation. The order was barked. The first arrow cut the air at roughly 9 a.m. Historians note its whistle as the war's opening note. Battle formations clashed. One by one, Hussein's champions rode out in single combat, leaving legends in the sand. With each martyr, a banner of courage was planted for later ages. Ali Akbar, radiating the Prophet's grace, galloped into the ranks. Spears shattered against his shield, lances fell, but numbers devoured brilliance. When he collapsed calling father, Hussein sprinted, ignoring arrows, cradled his son and prayed, "O Lord, bear witness against this people." Next, Qasim ibn Hassan asked permission to fight. A boy of 13, he wore a tunic too long and armor too large. Hussein wept but allowed him. Qasim fought like a cub of a lion until a hammering stroke split his helm. Hussein's sobs shook the plain as he carried the boy's body back. Veteran knights followed. Zuhair, Habib, Muslim. Habib, nearly 80, planted Hussein's banner in a surge that pierced the enemy line. Buying moments for children to drink the last drops of water Abbas had risked his life to fetch. Each martyr's fall deepened the desert's crimson. Then, near noon, came the tragedy that still makes mothers tremble. The infant Ali Asghar, cheeks hollow from thirst, whimpered in Hussein's arms. Hussein advanced on foot, lifted the baby high, and said, "If you deem me a traitor, what crime has this infant?" For an instant the army wavered, until an archer loosed a three-pronged arrow that pierced the child's tiny throat. Silence petrified the field. Hussein kissed his son's neck, whispered "Inna lillah," and buried him behind the tents with a dagger for a spade. Hours crawled. By mid-afternoon, only a handful stood. Hussein, his half-brother Abbas lying by the riverbank with severed arms, his adolescent nephew Muhammad ibn Abi Sa'id, the wounded warrior John, and a few others. Each fell in turn. Finally, the Imam rode alone, body gashed, turban sliced, dust matted with sweat and blood. Surrounded, he fought like a trapped falcon until spears converged. At roughly 3:10 p.m., Hussein was struck from behind, pierced in the chest, and beheaded as he prostrated in final prayer. Some chroniclers swear the sky darkened and a hot wind swept the field, but the tyrant's victory rang hollow even before sunset. Flames consumed the tents, children scattered, yet Hussein's sister Zainab rose amid the chaos like a lighthouse. She gathered survivors, shielded orphans, and faced the generals with words that made hardened riders drop their swords in shame. The captives' march began. The embers of Ashura carried on chains. From Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Damascus, women like Zainab, Kulthum, and the ailing Imam Zainul Abidin turned marketplaces into tribunals of conscience. Zainab's sermon in Kufa: "O people who betrayed our family, know you have slain the best of men, made mothers clutch infants and cry." In Yazid's palace, her thunderous rebuke: "Plot as you wish, but you can never erase our memory," shook the caliph on his throne. And that story ignited a flame no sword could quench. News raced across Arabia on caravans, seeped into Persian coffeehouses, echoed in Egyptian minarets. Within years, revolts erupted under banners reading "Ya Latharat al-Hussein," "O vengeance for Hussein." Poets immortalized every martyr, jurists sanctioned mourning gatherings, and each new regime learned that cruelty at Karbala would forever judge their deeds. Now you might ask, why does this story still matter today? Because Karbala was never about tents and spears. It was a moral compass forged in blood. It teaches that dignity counts more than survival, that even when justice seems crushed, its fragrance outlives tyrants' palaces. Each year on Ashura, millions of feet walk barefoot toward Karbala. Sunnis recite the hadith, "Hussein is from me, and I am from Hussein." Shias beat their chests in rhythmic lament. From Jakarta's alleys to Toronto's streets, free soup is served in memory of the thirsty camp. Hearts relearn that tears can polish the mirror of conscience. The message of Ashura is this: when darkness surrounds you, stand where Hussein stood, speak where Zainab spoke, and know that a single act of truth can outshine 1,000 banners of falsehood. The blood of Karbala still speaks, summoning each generation to live by the values for which that small band of believers gave everything. Justice, courage, and unwavering faith. That is why Ashura remains, today and always, the day that reshaped Islam. A tragedy carved in sand and blood, yet a triumph of the human spirit whose light refuses to die.